So yeah, in this particular session, we are going to cover, Palo Alto firewall, right? So I would talk about the firewall first. What is the firewall, right? So if I talk about the firewall, so it's a security network system which is designed to protect a computer system or network from malicious attack, right? So that's the firewall system. And if I talk about the firewall types, so you can see that we have a two category of firewall. One is a host-based firewall, and other is a network-based firewall. So host-based firewall is protecting, individual host. So you can take example of Windows firewall that is installed on the single computer, and it is protecting a single host. So if you have 1,000 system, so on the 1,000 system, you have to enable this host-based firewall. Okay. And its example is Windows firewall. On antivirus itself, we have firewall. Okay. And in Linux system, we have IP tables. So that is the example of host-based firewall. The another category is network-based firewall. Okay. So it can be deployed on the central point. Okay. And it can protect the entire network. So you don't need to install on each computer. You can just install one on central device, on central point, and from there all the traffic can be filtered. So here network-based firewall you can deploy as a hardware. I mean, you can purchase the hardware, or you can use a virtual server, or you can use a public cloud where you can deploy the firewall. And if I talk about this network-based firewall further types, so there would be a firewall which would be working on a layer 3, which can do the packet filtering. So we can say that that firewall is a packet filter firewall. We have the another type of firewall, which is stateful packet filter firewall, which would be working on a layer 3 and layer 4. So that means a stateful packet firewall is going to maintain the session. So if there is any traffic allowed for outgoing, then the return traffic would automatically get allowed. The next type firewall, we have application aware firewall. That means this firewall would be able to understand the application traffic, and based on that, it is going to take further decision. So when I say application aware firewall, so you know that in network, we have a different type of traffic. We have voice traffic, video traffic, or we have data traffic. And further, these kind of traffic would be generated by different applications. For example, Zoom is a one of the application. So the traffic which is generated by Zoom application, okay, or generated through Zoom application. So Palo Alto firewall would be understand that kind of traffic, that X traffic is generated by Zoom application, or Y traffic is generated by Teams application. So it is able to understand application traffic as well. What is the benefit if we are using application aware firewall? The benefit is you can apply more control, more granular control. So I would take a simple example. In Zoom, you can enable multiple functionality. Zoom, we have multiple functionality. We can do voice calling, video calling. Apart from that, we can do the screen sharing. We can, share the dashboard as well. Okay. Or we can share the file as well. So for example, some of the functionality we just want to allow in the organization for a particular application, and some of the functionality we just want to deny in the organization. So how this is possible? This is possible only through application aware firewall. If we are using packet filter or a stateful type of firewall, those firewall do not have a capability to understand the application. So we can't apply the granular control. The granular control can only be applied through application aware firewall. The next type of firewall we have web application firewall. And web application firewall is providing dedicated controls over the web type of application. So we can say that if we are hosting any website, and for that website, if we want to have some security, okay, so we can go with the web application firewall. So if I talk about the firewall Palo Alto, which we are going to understand, so this firewall having all these three capability. Okay, it can do the packet filtering, it can do the stateful filtering, and also this is application aware firewall. So Palo Alto, a firewall, can do all these things, but Palo Alto firewall can't do the web application filtering.
How the application firewall and the web application firewall are different?
Yeah. So web application firewall is providing, more controls for a web application. So as I told earlier, that application firewall, application aware firewall, application aware firewall is a firewall which can understand the application types. So as I told, let's say this is my firewall, and here is the user who is generating the traffic over the internet. Let's say that's a Zoom application, Zoom server. So this user is generating the traffic to Zoom. If this is application aware firewall, so what it would be able to do, it would be able to understand the signature of the application. So it would be able to understand the traffic of Zoom application, and it is providing more granular control for the Zoom application, Zoom app. Okay. So when I say more granular controls, that means here, if you go to policy and you just want to apply that, what kind of traffic you just want to allow for Zoom. So here you would get option to allow chat, to allow, video, voice, or data sharing for the Zoom services. Okay. So this is for the outbound traffic. Okay. And also for inbound traffic, if you just want to allow anything, that means upload or download, yes, you can allow anything. But this firewall, in this firewall, you can't apply more control. When I say more control, that means on the header label, for example, if you are sending any traffic, and on that traffic, we have a header. Okay, so on header label, if you want to modify any parameter, you can't do that, right? For in the application aware firewall. But in the web application firewall, especially web application firewall is designed to handle HTTP or HTTPS traffic. HTTPS traffic, basically. So when if we have WAF over here, web application firewall. So on the web application firewall, you can modify header level of traffic. Okay, so it can do the header inspection of HTTP, and based on that, it can take the decision. Okay, so let's say if you want to allow a certain length of header, yes, you can allow or deny on the web application firewall, but that is not possible on the application aware firewall.
So it is only the signatures which we can apply when we have application aware firewalls.
Yes, signature you can apply over here, and based on the signature, it can take the decision. A signature you can manually create, or you can update from the Palo Alto portal as well.
Yeah, excuse me.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the web application firewall is not applicable to Palo Alto, right?
Right. Web application firewall is not applicable in Palo Alto.
Okay.
Palo Alto can't work as a web application firewall, but it can work as a application firewall. So web application firewall are dedicated firewall for the protection of a web application. So if you have hosting any site and you just want to protect that, okay, so web application firewall is going to provide much and more control to protect that application. Okay, so coming to Palo Alto firewall, so we have different type of a hardware firewall of Palo Alto. Okay, we are going to talk about them. So you can see here we have a different series of a Palo Alto firewall, Palo Alto appliance. So you have a two option. Either you can just go and host a virtual machine of the Palo Alto firewall, or you can purchase a physical machine of the Palo Alto firewall. So when you are purchasing a physical firewall, so on that physical firewall you are getting a lot of dedicated thing. So for example, we have in Palo Alto appliance, we have 4K, 2K, 500 series of the appliances we have. And you can see here, if I go on the 4K appliance, so you can see this is the Palo Alto 4K appliance. And here you can see that on this particular firewall, this firewall is providing 10 Gbps firewall throughput. So what is the meaning of this? So for example, you purchase a firewall. So through the firewall, you would be sending the traffic, right? Maybe over the internet, maybe to the another network segment. Okay, this is a different network segment. This is your firewall. So you are sending the traffic to different network segment or maybe over the internet. So what is the basic capability of the firewall? To do the traffic filtering. Okay, so based on IP or port number or maybe application, you may allow or deny the traffic. So when I say allow or deny the traffic, that means you are opening the port over here. So let's say you have this source A, just want to go to the internet. So you would decide that for this host, if this is going over the internet, destination is a internet, and port number, let's say 80 or 443. Okay, so traffic should be allowed or denied. So that means all that capability is the firewalling capability to do the basic filtering, right? To do the basic filtering is a firewall capability. I mean, to allow the traffic or deny the traffic, that's a basic capability. So this is the firewall capability, right? So this Palo Alto 4K appliance or 4060 appliance is providing 10 Gbps firewall throughput. That means this firewall would be able to handle 10 Gbps traffic, okay, if passing through the firewall module. Okay, so this would be able to manage that. But we just want to have additional capability on this firewall. Okay, so I just want to have that not only this firewall do the firewalling work, but it should also do the threat prevention. Okay, what is the threat prevention? Basically, this is IPS kind of capability, intrusion prevention system. That means if there is any attack is happening over the network, okay, so it should be able to identify that this is the attack and it should be able to block it. Okay, so we know that in our network there could be multiple vulnerability. Let's say our server is not updated, or the application which is hosted on the server that is not updated. So definitely there is a vulnerability on those server. So if someone is trying to exploit those vulnerability, so firewall should be able to protect that. Okay, so if with firewall, if we enable threat prevention, then the capacity of the firewall would be going to be, capacity for the processing of the traffic is going to reduce. It would go to 5 Gbps. Okay, I would talk about that, what is threat prevention, but for now, just understand that if attacker is trying to, exploit any vulnerability which is within the network, okay, so on that cases, we just want to have additional control, which is threat prevention. And this is IPS capability, intrusion prevention system. So on that case, our firewall throughput of this 4060 is going to reduce, and it is providing 5 Gbps threat prevention capability.
It applicable to the DOS and DDoS attack also?
Yes, it is applicable for DOS and DDoS attack also.
So it means if we are enabling the DOS or DDoS prevention, the throughput would reduce 50%.
Correct. And number of sessions. So this much number of session it can create. Okay, that means with one firewall, multiple session can be created. So this is supporting this much number of session. And I would let you know that what is a session. So session is what when you are initiating the traffic between source and destination, and your connection get established. So that means session is going to be created. So maybe you have a one user which is creating multiple session to the different destination. So let's say this is the user and it's trying to browse, Facebook. So one of the session would be created. It's next time it browse google.com, another session would be created. Okay, so multiple session one user can generate. So altogether, if we have 1,000 user, so we can say that if one user is generating five session itself, so roughly around 5,000 session would be created by the 1,000 user. Okay, but it can be more. So a firewall should be able to manage those sessions, okay, those connections. It should not drop any session, or it should not terminate any session. It should establish that up to how much this can create the session. So 2000K it can create the session. This much session it can create over here. The physical port, if we talk about over here, so we have 4 SFP for 10 gig in this firewall. Okay, so we have 10 gig interface and we have a 1 gig interface on this particular firewall. So this is a 4060 series of firewall. Then we have another series of firewall. Here number of gigabit port is going to be increased, and SFP are 8 over here. So this is 4K, and this is 2K series of the firewall. We have another series. Okay, so as per your choice, you can choose the firewall. There are another series from the Palo Alto, which is 3K series. Okay, so let's understand this one. Okay, so it is supporting 4K throughput with application ID, and 4 Gbps throughput, firewall throughput with the application ID, 2 Gbps throughput with threat prevention. Okay, so if you enable IPS, the speed of the firewall 50% is going to be reduced. Also, the Palo Alto firewall have a capability to provide IPsec or SSL VPN. So if you enable IPsec VPN on this firewall, so for VPN traffic, it can provide 500 Mbps throughput. That means if you are creating a site-to-site VPN between two Palo Alto firewall, or maybe you have another Palo Alto firewall in between, you are also creating site-to-site VPN. So this firewall, 3050 series of firewall, it can provide the throughput up to 500 Mbps. Okay. Maximum session, it is supporting 500K. Okay. And a new session per second, it can create 50K around. Okay. So new session per second, it can create 50K. Okay. So what is the difference between maximum session? Maximum session is the session that is supported by the firewall. Okay. So if 500,000 session has been created, okay, on that, after that, if there is any new session, this firewall is going to deny that. And what is the meaning of new session? New session means per second it can create 50,000 session. That means if you have a multiple user and if they are generating the session, they are initiating the session too much, okay, still your firewall would be able to handle that traffic. And up to how much it can handle the traffic? It can handle the traffic 50K new session per second. Also, with this particular firewall on 3050 firewall series, you can create up to 2000 VPN tunnel, IPsec VPN tunnel. That means a single firewall can connect to 2000 IPsec devices. You can create 2000 IPsec tunnel. And SSL VPN, we have two types of VPN, right? In that firewall is supporting. One is site-to-site connectivity, and other is a remote VPN. Okay. So this site-to-site VPN, it is supporting 2000 site-to-site connection. And also for SSL, it is supporting 2000 SSL VPN user. Okay. In site-to-site VPN, the VPN in between, firewall to another VPN type of devices. But in remote VPN, the VPN tunnel would be terminating between user machine to the firewall. Okay. So if I talk about differences, so what happened over here? If I talk about site-to-site VPN, so my firewall would be creating a VPN tunnel to another firewall. The VPN connection between firewall to another firewall, or maybe between firewall to router. Okay. But in remote VPN cases, the VPN connection between firewall to the user machine, that's a remote VPN. Okay. Since this VPN are using SSL protocol to create the VPN tunnel, that's why sometimes it is called SSL VPN as well. Okay, we will cover that. So how much SSL VPN can be created through this firewall? 2000 SSL VPN user can create. Also, this firewall is supporting virtual router. Okay, so virtual router is a new concept in the Palo Alto firewall. Okay, what is a virtual router? In firewall, if I have a firewall, so firewall is going to maintain routing table, right? It is going to maintain routing as well. So let's say you have a two interface over here. Let's say this is inbound interface and this is outbound interface. So let's say inbound is connected to 192.168.1.0/24 subnet, and outbound, connected to the internet. So in this routing table, we have the routes like this. A routing table, it is going to maintain the routing table. Where this routing table would be maintained, that would be known as a VR. So in firewall, you can create multiple VR. That means you can create multiple routing instances. How much routing instances you can create? You can create up to 10. That means you can
VPN V4, right?
Sorry, VPN for that?
No, I am saying bit like VPN V4, the VRF thing.
Right, VRF thing, right. That is kind of VRF thing. You can segregate your routing table. Okay. So if you have multiple interface and some of the interface routing you can put on the one is segregate routing instances. So yes, you can do that. You can segregate your routing instances. So that's a virtual router. So how much virtual router you can create? You can create up to 10 virtual router where you can segregate your routing table. The next one is this is a virtualization of routing instances. Okay, you can completely virtualize your firewall as well. Okay, so if you just want to virtualize entire firewall, so you have to create a virtual system, which is also called VSys. Okay, so this is the base virtual system. That means by default, if you purchase your firewall, so you can just create one virtual system. That is a base one. By default, you would be getting one virtual system. That means this firewall entirely is acting as a one firewall. But you can do the virtualization. In the virtualization, within the firewall itself, you can create a multiple firewall. So with the physical firewall, you just created one firewall. And then you can create a firewall within this. So you can run multiple firewall instances within one firewall. That means this is a physical firewall, and within the physical firewall, you can run multiple virtual system. That means virtual firewall. So like we have virtualization in the computer itself. You purchase a physical machine. In this physical machine, you are installing a VMware or something. And on the top of VMware, you are installing the virtual machine, right? Same way, we have the firewall. We purchase the firewall hardware. And if you just want to have multiple firewall within the same firewall, so we can go with the virtual system, VSys. And I would give a real life example of this. As you know that in organization, we have different type of a firewall. I mean, as per placement, we say that this is a DMZ firewall, this is internal firewall, this is a VPN firewall. Okay. So we have this kind of requirement. So let's say in organization, we just want to design this kind of network. Okay, let's say we have a firewall, which is called external firewall. We have a firewall, which is called internal firewall. And we just want to have another firewall, which is kind of VPN firewall. Okay. So now what I just want that whenever any user is trying to browse internet, and these user is where these are the internal user. Okay. So how the traffic should go? The traffic should go to the internal firewall. And from internal firewall, traffic go to external firewall, and then it would go over the internet. And if these internal user want to talk to any partner, third party, partner, so on that cases, how the traffic should go to this one, it should go from the internal to the VPN firewall, and from VPN firewall, it should go to the any third party partner. This is a third party. Okay. So you can take simple example. Let's say there is a company, which is, take example, Microsoft. And Microsoft just want to talk to Cisco, okay, which is supplier or you can say partner. So it should talk through the VPN. So in this case, how many firewall we required? 3 firewall, right? We required 3 firewall. We need to purchase 3 firewall. But let's say organization do not want to purchase 3 firewall. Organization just have 1 firewall, 3060, let's say. Within this 3060, what it can do on the same physical firewall, it can just purchase 1 firewall, physical firewall. And in this virtual firewall, it do the virtualization. When I say virtualization, that means just create VCs. One VCs instance for internal. Another VCs instance for external. And another VCs instance for the VPN. 3 VCs instance it can create. Okay. So on the top of single firewall, you should have
external are different in the organizations.
Yeah, internal firewall and external firewall usually different in the organization.
What kind of traffic, on basis of what kind of traffic?
I mean, usually external firewall would be connected to the internet. So any kind of DMG traffic, okay, or internet traffic would be handled by this external firewall. And within the internal traffic means, let's say between database and AD, if you just want to have the communication, so that might be going via internal firewall. So internal firewall is going to protect your internal infrastructure. When I say internal infrastructure, so your AD server would be there, databases would be there, okay, or any internal application which is not exposing to the any external world would be there only in the internal segment.
So internal firewall is segregating the traffic between among these internal like applications, you can say.
Right. The reason I'm telling you, for example, you have external firewall, and external firewall, let's say behind the external firewall, you have put the server, which is internet facing, which is DMG, right? So we said that this is a DMG zone, which is internet facing. That means anybody from the internet can access this server, okay? And it for legitimate use. Maybe you have Exchange, okay, server, which is a DMG facing, where people would be sending the email. So inbound connection would be made to your organization. Or maybe you have application. You can take the example of NetMinion.net. Okay. So NetMinion.net server would be internet facing because everyone would be able to access that. Okay. So what we are doing on the external firewall, we are doing a netting. What kind of netting we are doing? We are doing a destination kind of netting. That means user would be hitting a public IP over here. And from public IP, that would be translated to the private IP. Okay. So if we want to expose some services over the internet, so definitely we would be putting our server on the DMZ zone. Okay. But we do not expose our database externally. So what would happen? A database we are putting in within the internal zone. Okay. So what happened if user would be able to access up to DMG server? DMG server is going to make another connection to the databases. So database we don't put over here, because if we put the database over here and due to any reason, if this zone is compromised, our database would also get compromised. So that's why we do the segregation over here. We decide that what kind of server should be put where. We know that AD is a critical infrastructure, right? Active Directory, very critical infrastructure. That's why AD server is placed in the internal zone.
Okay, got that. I also heard about the DMG, like 50%, 20%, 80%. I don't know what kind of interfaces are those. So
Yeah, that is a Cisco ASA basically.
okay. No, then okay. Sorry.
Yeah, I can let you know that if you have heard about that, no problem.
No, it's all right. It's all right. Maybe we will focus on.
Yes. That is within the Cisco ASA. In Cisco ASA, we have a kind of security label. Okay. So this is default defined. So if you have external interface, so in Cisco ASA, we have a security level from 0 to 100. 100 is the most secure and 0 is the less secure. So if you have defined in Cisco ASA, if you said that this is outside interface. So outside interface by default, ASA is going to define 0 security label. And if you say that this is inside, so for inside, it is going to define security label 100. So by default, the flow is in Cisco ASA, the flow is like from higher security label to low security label, traffic is by default allowed in Cisco ASA. So that means this traffic is by default allowed. But from lower security label to higher security label, traffic is not allowed. So this traffic would not be allowed default. But this concept in Palo Alto has been eliminated. In Palo Alto, by default, none of the traffic is allowed. Okay, because it doesn't define any kind of security label.
So in this case, either it is higher to lower, lower to higher. We need to open the ports.
You need to open the port. It's a zone based basically. So yes.
Zone based.
Yes.
Okay. What does that mean?
You can define zone, and let's say you have defined inside zone, and here you have defined outside zone in Palo Alto. Okay, so if you just want to allow the traffic, you have to define that if the source zone is X, destination zone is Y, traffic should be allowed or deny.
Okay. And we can create different of the zones.
Yes, you can create. You have a choice to create multiple zone, and you can bundle the multiple interface into same zone or different zone. It's up to your choice. So we will see that practically. Okay. So
one more question.
Yeah, go ahead.
You have written app ID enabled.
Yeah.
App ID is the same. The application aware signatures you mean here?
Yes, right. That's application aware signature.
Okay.
So I hope you got virtual system. That's a virtual firewall. Okay. So instead of organization purchasing multiple firewall, they purchase a single firewall, and on that firewall it do the virtualization. Then we will talk about security zone. So as I told that Palo Alto is zone based firewall. Okay. So that means you have to define security zone in firewall, then only you can allow the traffic or deny the traffic. If you haven't created any zone in the firewall, so you can't allow or can't deny the traffic. So how much security zone you can create in this particular firewall? You can create up to 40 security zone. Okay. So security zone is nothing, but you are going to define a traffic source and destination. Okay. As per placement of into the network. So as I told that you have internal firewall, so you can define that segment, that network segment as an internal. And if you have a DMZ server, so that network segment you can define as a DMZ. So that means if you are connecting to the internal, so that particular interface you can define into the internal zone. I can show you in this way. So let's say this is my firewall. Let's say this is a single firewall, which is just providing internet functionality. So the system So now we have interface. We have, let's say this is E0/0 interface and E0/1 interface. And what I just want to define that these systems should be able to access internet. Okay. So what we have to do, we have to define these interface as a part of some zone. We need to create a zone within the firewall. Okay. So I would create a zone. Since this seems as an internal and this seems as a external. So I would create a two zone, internal and external. Okay. And while allowing the rule, we will say that if the traffic is coming from internal zone and going to external zone for port number 443, the traffic should be allowed. 80 or 443. 80 and 443 traffic should be allowed. Okay. So as I told that Palo Alto firewall is a zone based firewall and you have to create the zone. If you are not creating the zone, you won't be able to allow that. Okay. So you have to create the zone, and how many zone you can create within one firewall? You can create up to 40. You can create up to 40. Also, with the zone, you have to create the policy. So in one firewall, how many policies you can write? Policy means rule. You can write up to 5,000 rules. Okay. What do you define in the rule? You are going to define source, destination. Okay. Application, source zone, destination zone, whether it should be allowed or not. So you can write the rule within the firewall, rule number 1, rule number 2, rule number 3, up to how much? 5,000 rule you can write over here to allow or deny the traffic. So this is 3050 firewall. Okay. We have another series of the firewall, and let's see what is the next series. We have 5K series of the firewall. This series of firewall you would see in the most of the enterprise organization. In the big level, you are going to see this series of the firewall. The reason is this is made to handle the enterprise traffic, entire enterprise traffic. Okay. And this is providing 20 Gbps firewall throughput, 10 Gbps threat prevention, 4 Gbps IPsec VPN, and 20,000 SSL VPN user can connect to this. Okay. And up to 4,000, it is going to create a session. Okay. You can create maximum 225 VCs. Okay. And these are the interface. We have 4 interface of 10 gig. We have 8 interface of 1 gig, and we have 12 interface of 10 gig. So this firewall you would see in the enterprise level. Okay. Normally you would not be able to see these kind of firewall. The next series firewall we have, sorry, I would talk about the high-end model now, not the next series. So let's say you are purchasing the high-end model. What the benefit you are going to get on the high-end model? So this is 5K series is a high-end model. So in this high-end series, you are going to get all the feature. Okay, so these hardware is going to support all the feature. For example, I talk about the firewall feature. So a single firewall can do a lot of things. So if you're purchasing the firewall, it can do a lot of things. This can act as a firewall. Okay. This can act as a IPS. This can act as an antivirus system. This can act as an anti-bot system. This can act as a URL filtering. This can act as a sandboxing. All these things firewall is going to provide. Okay, all these features. So you purchase the firewall. Okay. So your firewall is going to support all these features. But the problem is To activate all these features, what you required? You required a license. You need to purchase that license. Okay. If you haven't licensed, so definitely some of the feature you can't enable. Okay. Basic feature you can enable, firewalling feature you can enable. Okay. But IPS, antivirus, anti-bot, URL filtering, sandboxing, you can't do that. For that, definitely you're required to purchase the license. Okay, license is here, subscription basically. So you need to purchase the subscription for all these features. In high-end model, you are going to get swappable fans and power supply. That means if you are if you just want to replace fan or power supply, so you don't need to turn on off your firewall. You can replace you can say that this is hot pluggable. Okay, so hot swappable. So you can replace the firewall fan or power supply while firewall is on. So without downtime, you can replace the hardware devices. These high-end model is going to provide dual solid state hard drive. Basically, in this firewall, you are going to get hard SSD storage where operating system is going to be installed. Okay. The operating system in the Palo Alto firewall is known as the PAN-OS. Palo Alto Network Operating System. Okay, so that would be installed in the SSD. So let's say if one SSD fail, no problem, your operating system can operate from another SSD, okay, without any downtime. So that's why these firewall having the dual SSD. Also, it have the dedicated HA and management interface. So firewall have another interface apart from traffic processing interface. We have the HA interfaces where you can put the firewall in the high availability mode. Okay, so if one firewall is fail, no problem, your traffic would shift to another firewall. Okay, and also you can manage these firewall from a dedicated interface which is known as a management interface. So we have HA interface, high availability interface, a dedicated HA, HA1 and HA2 interface. We will talk that what is the use of HA1 or HA2. And apart from that, we have a management interface. So if you want to manage the firewall, okay, we can use the dedicated management interface. Okay, and its size or size factor is 2U. 2U is standard rack mounted form factor.
Is there more chassis based also?
More chassis?
Means chassis based also firewalls are there, or it is only 2 RU?
2 RU.
Okay, sir. And what about
two RU and 1 RU there also. So we have another series of the firewall. We have 220 series of the firewall, which is very basic series. We have 850 series of the firewall. These are 1 RU.
Okay.
These are 1 RU.
And what about the cloud? Do we have the same in the cloud?
In cloud, we don't have a hardware chassis. We have the virtual machine. Yeah.
The virtual one. Like we deploy F5 in the cloud.
Right. So you deploy F5 in the cloud. Okay. So you have some VM type in the for F5. Same way we have VM in the Palo Alto. So VM 300, VM 500. These are the cloud series. These are the virtual appliances series. These are the virtual appliances.
Sure. Thank you.
No problem. Now moving to next. This is 2K series of the firewall. Okay, now I would talk about the centralized management. Okay, So let's talk about the centralized management. So if I talk about centralized management, so we have one device which is known as a Panorama. Panorama is nothing but this is a centralized management. Centralized management. And if let's say you have a multiple firewall in a different location. So let's say this is a firewall which is in India location. Then you have another firewall which may be UK location. And you have another firewall gateway which on US location. So you have 3 firewall in different location. And you just want to manage that. Okay. So without centralized management, how your life would be. So let's say a new user join in your organization, that is Amar. And you need to provide him access to the all firewall. So what you are going to do? For Amar, you are going to create account in this firewall, on this firewall as well, on this firewall as well. And if Amar need to do any changes, let's say Amar need to block all the IP of any malicious IP. So let's say there is a security advisory came, and in that security advisory, someone said this IP 122.1.2.3, this IP is a malicious IP. And this need to block in the firewall. Okay. So Amar is going to create a rule in the India firewall. Amar would log in on UK firewall and would create the rule to the block, and Amar would log in into US firewall and he would block that. So, this is the thing where Amar do not have the central management access. Okay. Or there is no central management system, and that's why Amar have to log in on the each firewall. Let's say there is anything, let's say we just need to see that whether there is any attack is happening from this IP. For that, I just need to see the log. So what I would do, I need to log in on each firewall to check that. So what the new thing came, that is a central management device, Panorama. You can buy a Panorama and install in your network. And then you can integrate all these firewall over here. So earlier, Amar was trying to log in on each firewall to do any kind of thing. But this time, Amar just need to have access of Panorama. Since all the firewall is already added in the Panorama, Amar would get the access.
So with Panorama now, we can access those 3 players, right?
Yeah. So if you just want to manage, if you have 1,000 of firewall, I mean, not 1,000 of firewall, but if you have multiple firewall, okay, and you just want to manage them from one location, manage in the sense, you just want to create a policy, okay, policy or object, or you just want to upgrade them, or you just want to see the logs. You can use a central device, and from this central device, you can manage all these firewall. You just want to reboot the firewall, you can access that firewall through Panorama and you can reboot. Okay. If you want to create a policy, yes, you can create a policy. So from central device, you can manage all these firewall. So that's why Panorama is used over here.
You hold on, sir. From central device, you can manage the firewall. What about location?
Location means
Like talk about US, UK. So they must be in where the panorama will stand.
where the Panorama would be. Panorama you can install in any of the data center. Maybe you can install in US data center itself.
Okay.
And your data center connectivity would have, okay. So other data center connectivity would have. So you can access other data center firewall from the same location.
Okay.
So this Panorama, you have choice. You want to install in US data center, you can install. Maybe on UK users want to install, you can use UK or you can use India. It's up to your choice. All your data center would be connected through the network.
It should be about the latency also, right?
Yeah, there is a latency issue as well. But if you are using any dedicated service circuits, so definitely latency would be very less. So if I talk about Panorama, so Panorama has a physical hardware. You can install Panorama on the I mean, you can purchase the Panorama as a physical hardware. A physical hardware series is M100 or M500. That is a physical hardware. You can deploy the Panorama management, and it can provide you management and logging function using a dedicated appliance. Okay, so if you have a distributed firewall system, that means a firewall gateway installed in the across the data center. So to manage that, you can use the Panorama. A Panorama device can be installed also on the virtual appliances. So if you have VMware EXSI, so definitely you can install there as well.
Okay, if we have Panorama,
Mhm.
can we still through access the devices individually, or it would be like just only we need to use Panorama?
Yeah, in that case, if you have a Panorama, so it's not like that you are going to lose any individual firewall control. Individual firewall control you would have as an admin. You can manage individually firewall or you can manage through Panorama. So it's up to your choice. You can restrict the access for user to log in, directly. You can allow them to log in through Panorama only to the firewall. So yes, that restriction is possible.
Got it.
So any kind of local login you can disable on the firewall level. Security subscription. This is basically license. Okay. So you purchase the firewall, but if you just want to use any other feature, okay, so for that you have to use this security subscription, or we can say license. So if I go to license part, so we have a different type of license in the firewall that we need to purchase. So threat prevention. Threat prevention is kind of IPS license. So if you just want to have IPS feature, we need to purchase this subscription. URL filtering. So basically the URL filtering by name, it's known as if we just want to allow or deny some URL category. Okay. So for that, we need to have URL filtering. So your firewall can work as a URL filtering. I would give simple example why we should use URL filtering. So let's say this is my firewall, and through this firewall, people are browsing internet. So you might heard about the proxy, right? In the proxy, you have the functionality to allow or deny certain type of website, certain category of website. Same way firewall can do that. If with firewall you are using URL filtering, this firewall have the capability to block or allow some category. So we have different category of the URL. Okay, we might have a business category. If I talk about URL, so we have business category, we have finance, we have let's say social networking, we have search engine. So we have this kind of category over here. So if we just want to allow some of category and we just want to deny some of the category, so for that we require URL filtering. So let's say we decided that on the Palo Alto, we just want to block entire social networking website. So Facebook or Twitter or any kind of social networking website should not be accessible to all the organization users. Okay, we just want to do that. The reason is we just want to increase the productivity. Okay, and also we just want to reduce the surface attack. Okay, if you just provide open internet to your organization, definitely that is going to increase the surface attack in the organization. People would try to browse malicious site. Okay, and from there is a possibility that their computer get infected. So what we just want to do the URL filtering so that user would be able to access a business purpose website, not any other website. Okay, so to achieve that capability, yes, we need to enable the URL filtering, and for that we need to purchase the URL filtering license. The next kind of subscription we have Global Protect. Global Protect is nothing but in Palo Alto, this Global Protect is known as a SSL VPN, or we can say remote access VPN. So if you just want to have the remote access VPN, okay, so for that we can go with the Global Protector. Okay, so you know that what is the use of VPN. If you are at home and you just want to connect to your office network securely, for that you have to enable the VPN and then you need to connect to your office network, right? So how we achieve that in Palo Alto? We achieve that using a Global Protector. Okay, so on Palo Alto, we are going to enable Global Protector feature, and through that feature, we can provide the functionality to the user to connect through VPN network. And finally, we have Wildfire subscription. This subscription is kind of sandboxing. I would let you know what is the use of sandboxing. Have you heard about this term earlier? Sandboxing? If no, let me tell you. So this sandboxing is used to prevent from zero-day attack. Let's understand zero-day attack and then we will understand sandboxing. So what happened in zero-day attack? There is some kind of vulnerability, let's say newly discovered vulnerability found. So let's say this is a system, computer system, which have the Windows installed. On this Windows server, let's say any new vulnerability found. Any new vulnerability found, I would take example. There is a SMB protocol. You might heard about that, which is used to transfer the file from one computer to another computer system. So SMB is a protocol, or you can say this is one of the application. This is by default enabled on the Windows operating system. So let's say this Windows operating system have a SMB version 1, and in this SMB version 1, there is any kind of vulnerability. Okay, so that is a vulnerability weakness. Okay, through this vulnerability, attacker can execute remote code So that vulnerability is a RC vulnerability. That's a remote code execution vulnerability. And this is newly discovered. Okay. So when I say newly discovered, that means apart from the attacker, nobody knows about this vulnerability. None of the other vendor knows this vulnerability. And for that, there is no signature available in the market. So your antivirus, if there is any attack is happening for this vulnerability, your antivirus is not aware, or your firewall is not aware because they doesn't know about this vulnerability. So this kind of vulnerability is known as a zero-day attack. And simple, I would give with the example. There was a attack happen on UK system 3 or 4 years back, WannaCry attack. This was attack regarding the assembly version 1. Okay. At that time, nobody was knowing that what is the vulnerability, okay, and what is the fix for that vulnerability. So when there is any vulnerability discovered in the market, and for that vulnerability there is no attack, no signature is available, so that kind of vulnerability is known as a zero-day attack. So what attacker does basically using these vulnerability, they try to do any kind of malicious activity on the computer system. And for WannaCry, what they did, they encrypted the file. Whatever the file was in the computer system, they encrypted that. They encrypted the file. And post encryption, okay, what they did, post encryption, they given the link. Okay, when user was trying to open that particular file, they given the link that you have to pay this much money, then they are going to release that encryption. They are going to provide the password to decrypt that file. Okay, so this kind of things is known as a ransomware. WannaCry was a ransomware because they were asking for some ransom to decrypt that file. So zero-day attack, I mean to say that these kind of vulnerability, basically what happened, in zero-day attack, there is no signature available to the any vendor for newly discovered vulnerability. So in that case, what we should do? So we have the option sandboxing. How to prevent this? So we can use a sandboxing. What happened in the sandboxing? Let's say there is a file which a user want to download. This is file over the internet and user want to download through the firewall. This is my user who just want to download that file, this file from them through the firewall. Now, as soon as this user hit the link to download this file, a firewall is going to check whether this file is okay or this file is malicious. Okay, how it is going to check? It is going to check the signature of this file. Within the firewall, there would be signature of the file present. But this is the new file. For that file, there is no signature. The firewall doesn't know about that file, whether that file is malicious or not. So on that case, if firewall doesn't know, firewall send that file into the sandbox system to check whether that file is malicious or not. In sandbox system, there is a pre-installed machine, pre-installed Windows machine, pre-installed databases, pre-install Linux machine. So there would be pre-install infrastructure where this file is going to be extracted on all these machines and going to be executed there. Post the execution, this sandboxing is going to notice the behavior of this file whether this file is trying to do any kind of malicious connection, or this file is trying to do the encryption, okay, or this file is doing any malicious activity. For any malicious activity, the sandboxing is going to analyze that. Okay, this entire sandboxing system. If there is none of the malicious act done by this firewall file, so what would happen? The file sent back to the firewall that this file is okay and safe to download. So firewall is going to add that into its signature and would allow this user to download that file. But if it was malicious, then this sandboxing would have informed the firewall that the file which user is trying to download, that is a malicious, you should block that connection.
So that means the sandbox will generate signature, right?
On sandboxing, there won't be any signature. On the sandboxing system, there won't be any signature. It is going to, do the live analysis. It is going to do live analysis of that file. It is going to extract that file into its system and going to check the behavior of the file, whether the file is doing any kind of malicious activity or not. There won't be any signature, but post analysis, this is going to generate one signature and going to update that signature on the firewall. So in this way, the file which do not have any signature available on the firewall, but not an issue. Your firewall is going to send that into sandboxing, and sandboxing is going to generate the its analysis, and post generation of analysis, this is going to update the signature into the firewall about the particular file type. But this 0-day attack does not ensure that 100% security. The reason is there is a limitation of the sandboxing. Each sandboxing has a limitation. If the file is password protected, then sandbox cannot extract it because sandbox do not have the password. That is the one thing. Okay, sandbox can't do anything for password protected file. Also, if the file size is very large, okay, let's say 10 MB, 50 MB file is okay, but let's say each sandboxing has a limitation. So some of the sandboxing has a limitation. Usually a file larger than 50 MB, if the file is larger than 50 MB, the sandboxing can't process that file. Okay, so there is a limitation as well. Okay, so I mean to say that what is a wildfire? So wildfire is nothing but that is a sandboxing of Palo Alto firewall.
So, Amar,
Mhm.
here in the sandboxing, every file need to be checked from the sandboxing first.
No, not every file. The file which do not have a signature into the firewall.
Okay. So, which is looking like that it can be a suspicious file.
Yes. So if firewall doesn't know about the file, okay, on firewall doesn't have any signature available, so firewall send that file to the sandbox before allowing it to the network.
Okay, and this is the wildfire you were talking about.
Yes, in Palo Alto, that sandboxing feature is known as a wildfire.
Okay, and the global protect is
Global Protect is a VPN.
VPN, either site to site or either SSL.
No, this is a remote VPN.
SSL.
VPN, right?
URL filtering. You were talking about the social site, social link filtering, right?
Right.
And it should have its own database, and that would get enabled.
Yeah, I mean, for URL filtering, it is using two databases. One is the Palo Alto databases, and another is I'm forgetting that.
And it can be customized also, right? We can do the user defined.
Yes, user dependent as well.
And can we do as such like, okay, Gmail can open, but file cannot be downloaded or cannot be opened?
Yes, that you can do on the application filtering.
Okay.
Yes, you can do that. So Palo Alto using two URL databases. One is a PanDB, another is a Bright Cloud. Okay, like we have a Silver Peak is also using Bright Cloud. Okay, for URL filtering databases. So this is using Bright Cloud. So these are the security subscription. If you just want to have sandboxing, you need to purchase Wildfire license. If you just want to have SSL VPN, you need to purchase Global Protect license. If you just want to have URL filtering, so you need to purchase URL filtering license. And if you want to have IPS kind of thing in your Palo Alto firewall, you need to purchase threat prevention subscription.
So everything required the separate license.
Yes, separate license required. This is the initial flow logic. Okay, so what happened basically? We have 5 steps for the traffic checks. So first step, Palo Alto do initial packet processing, where it looks to source IP, policy-based forwarding, destination zone, NAT policy. Then it checks for the security policy, where it is going to check whether the port are allowed. And if port are allowed, session would be going to be created. Then next in third step, it is going to check application, where it is going to check whether traffic is encrypted. If traffic is encrypted, it is going to decrypt that. And post decryption, it is trying to identify the application ID, that the traffic is generated by which application, Zoom or what. And after that, it is going to check the security policy. In the security policy, it is going to check all the security profiling. So when I say all the security profile, that means for IPS checks, okay, or for URL filtering checks, you are going to enable the profile. So it is going to check that what all the module has been enabled on the firewall, whether the IPS has been enabled. If IPS is going to be enabled, your traffic is going to check against the IPS signature. If URL filtering is going to be enabled, so your traffic is going to check against the URL filtering. So security profile is going to apply it on the fourth step. And on fifth step, it is going to post policy processing. That is the final step where it is going to re-encrypt the traffic if it has decrypted at this stage. And finally, NAT is going to apply it and the packet is going to be routed. So this is the flow logic. This flow logic we are going to understand in a detail, okay, which is detailed Palo Alto diagram. Okay, so later we are going to understand this. Now I would talk about physical interface. So on Palo Alto, we have interfaces. That interface can operate into different mode. Okay, so we have a different mode of the interface, and that we are going to discuss here. I would start with the very simple one, which is layer 3. Okay, layer 3 is very easy to understand, and after that, we'll talk about the other interfaces. So let's understand Palo Alto physical interface. So if you have a firewall over here,
Can we touch this topic tomorrow?
sure, definitely.
One of the person is not available. Maybe it should not be a much loss for him.
Yeah, no problem. We can.
Just a suggestion, maybe.
Yeah, no problem. We can touch this topic tomorrow. So we will start again from the flow logic, and then we can go with this physical one. So maybe tomorrow we can understand detailed traffic. Packet flow first on the Palo Alto firewall. I would show you flow as well. That this is the module, how the traffic flow is going on that practically, and then we can touch these interfaces.
The material on this.
Sorry, what did you say?
The materials to read about, you know.
Okay, so I would share this.
Material you will get. You will get that.